This is a 1984 Roland JUNO-106. It's a beloved classic analog synthesizer, and today I'm going to review it. I'll tell you about all its quirks and features, get it into the studio for a test drive, and then I'm going to give it a Jeff score. Before I get started, be sure to check out Synthesizers and Bids, my enthusiast keyboard website for cool synthesizers from the modern era. We've had some fantastic sales on Synthesizers and Bids, including this mint condition Roland Jupiter 8, which sold for just $3.87. This stunning Yamaha CS80 brought in just under $12. And this Casio VL Tone VL1 in mint condition with carrying case went for a mere $98,423.67. Anyway, if you're looking to buy or sell a cool enthusiast synthesizer from the modern era, Synthesizers and Bids is the place to do it, with daily auctions and great selection at synthesizersandbids.com. Now with free listings, you can list your cool synthesizer and auction it on Synthesizers and Bids. Let's go ahead and look at the front panel of the JUNO-106. Then we'll look at the back panel. Then I'll play you a few sounds and demo some of the features. Let's look at this area first. We have a volume potentiometer, nice and smooth. A potentiometer for the portamento. We also have a switch assigned to that at the same time, so we can turn portamento on and off. We have 3 sliders here, DCO, VCF, and LFO. We can affect the DCO, the pitch, by bending it up or down with our joystick here. We can affect the filter, both positive and negative. We can also affect the LFO by pushing this forward. Next, we have our main panel here, where most of our controls are located. We have a slider for the rate on our LFO, and everything is nicely labeled here. That's one thing you have to say about the Juno. It's so well laid out. We have a delay time. These sliders are 30 millimeters, just in case you were wondering. Next, we have the range for our keyboard, 16, 8, and 4. There are 15 of these little LEDs that light up, and all of them but one are red. The last one is green, and you'll see that in a moment. In our DCO area here, we also have an LFO for the DCO, and we can use that to affect our square wave here, that we can make it pulse if we want to. You can also do that manually. Then we also have a sawtooth wave. Now we can have both of those on at the same time, or none of them on, which would be when we might want to use the noise generator. We also have a sub, and what's nice about the sub on this, and it's not true on some other keyboards that I own, is that you can control the level of it. On some of the other synths I've owned, it's either on or it's off, and here you get to control how much of the sub you want to mix with the main oscillators. Next up, we have our high pass filter, and this is going to affect the low end here. If we have it all the way up to the top, it's really going to thin out our low end. Down here, it's going to be a lot, it's not going to affect the low end, and it's going to be a lot more beefy. Next, we have our voltage controlled filter, and this is where a lot of the magic happens here. We have frequency cutoff, we have resonance, we have our envelope control for our filter, we have the LFO, and we have keyboard tracking. We have a switch here, nice positive sounding switch even after all these years. and we can set up our filter to act to the envelope either positively or negatively. It's really a great idea to look at some of the sounds you have and just go in, and if they're already set up for a standard positive filter, switch them over to negative, and sometimes you'll get a nice effect there. Over here we have our voltage controlled amplifier. We can have it following the standard envelope ADSR, or we can just set it up for a gate. So if it's an organ, it'll just be on and then it will be off when we let go. And here we do have our envelope, standard ADSR, attack, decay, sustain, and release. And the times on these are pretty long. And with 30mm faders, you do get enough granularity here to set up some interesting sounds. Last but not least, on this top portion of the front panel, we have our chorus. We can have it off. We can have it on chorus 1, which is a pretty mellow sounding chorus. Or we can have it a little bit more intense. One thing about the Juno is I would say at least 30% of the sound is the chorus. Roland creates a very nice choral sound, and with only one DCO and a sub, you really need the chorus helping out, making the sound fatter. Key transpose is pretty simple. You hold down the key transpose, and this is basically default here. C, C sharp, D, D sharp. There's no flat indicator. That little period is telling you sharp. So if we were to hit a B flat, we're actually going to get A sharp, which is fine. We have B. Now it will go up an octave or down an octave. So here it really is going to go up an octave. So if I do this, and then I hit it here, you can see it really did go up an octave. Now if we go in the minus direction, we basically get the same indications here, whether it's sharp or just a natural note, but we also get a little minus to tell us that we're going in the other direction. Poly 1 and Poly 2. This is interesting. Poly 1 is stated in the manual as being your basic play mode. And Poly 2, they want you to use with a polyphonic portamento. And I'll demo that in a moment. You can also press both of them at the same time, and you get all 6 voices stacked one on top of each other. And you'll see how I use that later on bass sounds. Next we have MIDI channel. Just hold this down, press the MIDI channel you want, 2, 7, 8. They're actually labeled down here on the bottom in light blue. There's 9, there's 15, 16. Good. Next we have our patches. We have our banks here, and we have our patch numbers over here. So that's essentially bank 7, patch number 2. And we have a switch here that toggles between group A and group B, and that gives us 64 patches in each group, a total of 128. But the JUNO-106 actually has 129 patches, because if you put it into manual mode by pushing this button here, it just reads the front panel controls, and now it's whatever that was set up to do. Not the best sound in the world, but you could set it up however you wanted it. We have controls over here, write to if we have a patch and we want to write it. So I have patch number 72. I'll just write it to the same one. It went right back into 72. And it doesn't matter if which button you press first, the bank or the patch number. It still works. The next 3 controls here, save, verify, and load, are for your tape interface on the back. Now, today you're probably not going to use tape, but you could send it to your DAW and save it as a WAV file. That would work. You wouldn't want to use compression or normalizing or anything like that. You could mess up the information. But This is what we did back in the day. This unit also has system exclusive MIDI, so that can be used also, which is a much better way to go. Let's talk about the buttons and controls on the back now. There's actually only one button back there, the power switch, but there is one other control and everything else is connectivity. Over here, we have a level switch. It's a 3-position switch and it's listed as low, medium, and high. And this just allows you to interface with external audio amplification gear so you get the right level. Here we have a mono out. It can be a stereo out. Since we have a chorus, we're creating a stereo signal. Then we have a headphone jack, which is stereo. We have a pedal control, which is just your standard sustain control that you might use for a piano sound. Here we have patch shift, and I actually have this set up. And so if I press the switch on the floor, you can see it's magically changing. It stays within a bank, so you can only switch between 8 possible patches, but it's still very useful for live situations. And I used it a lot when I was playing live back in the day. Here we have a tune. We have a small rotary potentiometer on the back for tuning. I kind of already talked about the load and save for the tape. It's just on 1/4" inputs and outputs. On this side, we have a MIDI function switch, and it has 3 positions. In position 1, it's essentially what you're playing on the keyboard. In position 2, it's keyboard, patch change, and pitch bender. And then in mode 3, it receives everything. You can send out the information from these controls in real time over MIDI and then send them back to the device. So you can affect the filter cutoff and the resonance and the envelopes. And a lot of people used a JUNO-106 for EDM because this was an instrument that came out in 1984, but would allow you to have this kind of control, which was really quite amazing. Next up, we have our MIDI in, out, and through on standard 5-pin DIN connectors. Then we have our memory protect, and I just love this memory protect. There is something really cool about it. It's a 3-position memory protect switch. When it's all the way to the left, memory protect is on. When it's all the way to the right, memory protect is on. And when it's in the center, memory protect is off. Now, they could have just put on and off and had you switch backwards and forwards, but this way you can just push it all one way and know that you're protected. Kind of cool. Then we have our power switch right here, and below it we have a power cable, and that power cable is proprietary. I'm a tad over 6 feet tall, and you've seen in other videos with hilarious results me trying to fit into keyboards. So today we're going to try this with the JUNO-106. Going to open up the lid of the Juno. Try not to get popped by the charged capacitor here. I can get my forearm in. Now I'm going to try to get my head in. Oh yes, good ergonomics. I give it a thumbs up. All right, test driving the Juno. Going to start here with a typical Juno pad sound. That's a pretty good sound, and the Juno's well known for the Juno strings pad. Next up, we have patch number 12 here. This is an organ sound. You're not going to get a classic church organ sound out of the JUNO-106 because you can't detune one of the oscillators because it only has one oscillator and a sub. but it does have some very punchy jazz type organ sounds. Right now I'd like to demo the polyphonic portamento. So put it into Poly 2 here. And I just want to key some notes at the end of the keyboard. Then I'm going to have it portamento to a chord that I play. And that's polyphonic portamento. You can see that we still have some range where we can make it quite a bit slower and take more time to get to the final chord. Next up, we have a thin angelic pad. Patch number 14 here is a solo brass sound. We have no chorus. Now, if we add chorus, it's going to make all the difference in the world. If we play it polyphonically with no chorus, add some chorus, I've always said the chorus is about 30% of the Juno sound. Number 15, piano. This is what I used back in the day. So we can do this. And if we want it just to be a little bit brighter, turn it into a harpsichord. We could also play with the envelope too and make it a little bit more percussive. Next up, a bass sound. You can hear the noise generator in there. Take that out. So you want just a little bit. All right. Number 17. This is an inverted envelope patch. You can just switch that to a regular envelope and see what it sounds like. We just have it inverted. I've always said it's a great idea to take any of your JUNO-106 patches, and if you have a positive envelope on it, switch it to a negative envelope and see what you get. Number 18. Number 21 is an effect. Number 22 is also an effect. You can really hear those Juno filters. '23, buzzy synth sound. Now here, let's hear that without the chorus. With the chorus. The deep chorus. Definitely want that chorus sound in there. Next up, 24, another synth sound, nice big synth sound. Now I'd like to play you my 44 bass patch. I talk about this a lot, and this is the sound. I like it because it's just blah. But I never play it this way. I always play it in stacking mode. So I have poly 1 and poly 2 activated at the same time, and it's going to stack all 6 voices. It's a pretty good sound. So that's the JUNO-106 test drive.
And now it's time to give the Juno a Jeff score. Starting with the gig category and styling, the Juno isn't beautiful, but it's not ugly either. With its 80s retro cool graphics, it gets a 6. For performance, it's only one oscillator per voice plus a sub, and it gets a 5 out of 10. Handling is average with a combo modulation pitch bend joystick. I'm sure at the time it was considered fantastic, but with age and improvements in other synthesizers, it only gets a 3 out of 10. Fun factor is high given the sheer experience of operating all the controls on a 40-year-old classic, and it gets a 9 out of 10. Finally, cool factor. These are not rare synthesizers, but many people get all googly-eyed over them, and it gets a 9 out of 10 for a total weekend score of 32 out of 50. Next are the daily studio categories and features. It has polyphonic portamento and 128 patches, but suffers from a tiny 2-character display and only one oscillator and a sub per voice, and it gets a 3 out of 10. Ergonomics are good. I was able to get my head and forearm into the case, and it is 1 parameter per button or slider, and it gets a 6 out of 10. Quality is fair. The main chassis is metal with plastic end caps and a particle board undercarriage. But the voice chips fail after about a year of use, and although the acetone procedure can help, it's no guarantee, and it gets a 3 out of 10. Practicality is average. There are cheaper hardware alternatives that arguably sound better, and software plugins that sound dead on, and it gets a 5 out of 10. Finally, value. And I think it's way overpriced for what it is. It had relatively high production numbers at 40,000 units, and given that there are often more than 100 for sale, it's hard to call it rare, or even hard to find, and it gets a 4, for a total daily studio score of 21 out of 50. Add it all up, and the Jeff score is 53 out of 100, which places it here against other 80s synths. I've played all the other synths on this list, and the JUNO-106 is a fine synth for what it is. With its basic feature set, if it were only reliable, I would call it the Honda Civic of synthesizers. However, with the issues related to voice chips, it's more of a Ford Pinto of synthesizers, basic and pedestrian, with that feeling of impending doom that it might fail on you during a gig.